Before we dive into this tale, here are a few things to consider. If you're a content creator, a writer, or just someone who loves a good story, you're in for a treat. Hit that like button if you're excited, and make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next adventure. And by the way, are you sipping on a coffee right now? I hope you're not about to spill it on anyone important. Chapter 1. The Glass Cage. The first unwritten rule of Zenith Corp was silence. Its majestic glass skyscraper pierced the London sky like a sharp dagger. But inside, it functioned with the mechanical precision of a Swiss watch. Muffled footsteps on Italian marble, whispered conversations, measured, calculated smiles, never genuine. The empire Elias Thorne had built operated under a single, invisible commandment. Here, golden cascades of dawn light filtered through the executive floor windows when Eleanor, the head of human resources, urgently gathered her staff. "We need a new executive assistant." Her voice trembled slightly. "Ms. Davies resigned this morning." A nervous murmur rippled through the room. It was the fourth in less than 2 months. Resigned, or were they destroyed? Someone whispered, drawing panicked glances. "Mr. Thorne needs someone for today," Eleanor continued, pointedly ignoring the question. Her knuckles, white around the folder, betrayed her own terror. "Any internal candidates?" The silence thickened like poisonous fog. No one would volunteer for the slaughterhouse. Elias Thorne had made his name synonymous with relentless success. At 30, his face graced business magazines with headlines crowning him the ruthless genius or the ice strategist. His penetrating gray eyes seemed to dissect any weakness from miles away. His jaw, perpetually tense, rarely relaxed into anything remotely resembling a smile. "My sister has a friend," Charlotte from accounting timidly offered. "She just finished her master's in communications. She desperately needs a job." Eleanor looked at her as if she'd offered to send a lamb to the slaughter. "Are you sure the position requires fortitude?" "She's brilliant," Charlotte insisted, though her voice betrayed doubt. "And she needs the money." "Call her." Eleanor closed her folder with determination. "But warn her to come prepared for the worst." Chapter 2. The Unforgettable First Impression. The elevator doors opened on the wrong floor, and Jessa Davies cursed under her breath, trying to balance her briefcase, the coffee she'd bought on the way, and simultaneously adjust the collar of the blouse she'd ironed at 5 a.m. "Floor 48, please," she asked the executive who entered behind her, who eyed her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. She didn't fit in there, and they both knew it. Her black pencil skirt, bought the day before, was a bit snug. The heels, borrowed from her sister, were as comfortable as walking on knives. But her smile, that was genuinely hers. Wide, slightly crooked, impossible to contain, even in moments of nervousness. "First time at Zenith?" the executive asked with a tone that suggested it might also be her last. "Is it that obvious?" Jessa laughed, causing a few drops of coffee to escape her cup. "Damn, now I look like a nervous, clumsy rookie." "Good luck," he replied enigmatically, stepping out on the 40th floor. When she finally reached the right floor, the lobby gleamed with icy luxury, all white marble and polished steel. The receptionist, a woman with perfectly coiffed hair, scanned her from head to toe with industrial laser efficiency. "Jessa Davies, I have an interview for the executive assistant position." The receptionist arched an eyebrow so perfectly plucked it looked drawn on. "You're 10 minutes late." The traffic was... "Punctuality is essential for Mr. Thorne," the woman interrupted her mercilessly. "This way." As she followed those heels clattering like hammers on the marble, Jessa felt the gazes of all the employees boring into her. Their expressions varied between curiosity and pity, like spectators watching an inexperienced gladiator enter the arena. Turning a corner, fate decided to play a cruel trick. A tall man, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that must have cost more than her semi-annual rent, suddenly appeared in her path. The collision was inevitable. The coffee, of course, found its destiny on that immaculate white shirt. Time froze. The silence became tangible. "I'm so incredibly sorry," Jessa stammered, desperately searching for a tissue in her purse. "Please, let me help you." When she looked up, she met a pair of gray eyes that seemed to contain an Arctic storm. The man's jaw tensed, as if he were holding back a tsunami of fury. "I suppose I should introduce myself," she said, trying to break the tension with a nervous smile. "I'm Jessa Davies, your possible new assistant. Though after this, I imagine the possibilities have significantly shrunk." The grimace on his face didn't budge an inch. Several employees witnessing the scene seemed to have stopped breathing. "I'm Elias Thorne." Of course he was. The universe had an especially cruel sense of humor that morning. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Thorne." Jessa extended her hand automatically, as if she hadn't just ruined his attire. "I'm so sorry about the coffee." "Yes, it's a great consolation," he retorted dryly. "It was an excellent Americano. The barista told me the beans were from Colombia." Something undecipherable crossed Elias's eyes. Incredulity? Indignation? A microscopic glimmer of amusement immediately suppressed. "Do you always talk so much, Ms. Davies?" "Only when I'm nervous." Jessa shrugged. "Or hungry, or actually awake." A nearby employee choked back a gasp, as if she'd witnessed an act of suicide. "Ah, to my office," he ordered curtly. "Now." As she followed him down the hallway, feeling all eyes fixed on her back, Jessa leaned towards a woman who looked particularly horrified. "Is he always this charming, or did I get the premium version today?" she whispered. The woman stared at her as if she'd just signed her death warrant. The office doors swung open, revealing a minimalist space with panoramic views of the city. Jessa took a deep breath and entered behind him, a smile defying all logic and common sense. The door closed with a definitive click, like a trap springing shut. "Do you know why I hired you, Ms. Davies?" The question hung in the air-conditioned office like a bubble about to burst. Jessa, against all odds, was still standing in front of the glass desk, still employed. "For my charming first impression?" she ventured, her fingers nervously fiddling with the edge of her skirt. Elias observed her with that intensity that made seasoned executives tremble. His eyes, darker in the natural light streaming through the windows, seemed to search for something in her. A flaw, a crack, something to justify firing her. "Because of your resume," he finally replied, holding up the folder with her credentials. "Masters in Communications, specialization in corporate narratives, exceptional references." "Wow," Jessa blinked in surprise. "And here I thought resumes went straight into the shredder." A microscopic crease appeared between Elias's eyebrows, almost imperceptible, almost human. "I need someone who knows how to communicate," he continued, ignoring her comment. "The company is expanding into international markets. Current presentations lack impact." "You want me to write your speeches?" "I want results." The statement cut through the air like a knife. "Your first task, revise the presentation for the Japanese investors next month." Jessa nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of responsibility. She wasn't just an assistant. She was a test, an experiment. "May I ask what happened to my predecessor? Did she not meet your expectations?" "And what exactly are your expectations, Mr. Thorne?" "Perfection." There was no boast in his voice, only a cold certainty. "Do you think you can handle that?" Jessa's smile transformed into something more determined, deeper. "Give me a week with that presentation." Chapter 3. Nights and Whispers. The week unfolded in a whirlwind of midnight coffees and early mornings in front of the computer. Jessa quickly discovered that working for Elias Thorne was like constantly dancing on the edge of a cliff. Thrilling, terrifying, addictive. On Friday afternoon, Elias unexpectedly entered while she was furiously scribbling in her personal notebook, a worn-out journal she carried everywhere. "What are you writing with such enthusiasm?" he asked, causing Jessa to snap the notebook shut. "Nothing important. Ms. Davies," he said. "I detest lies more than incompetence." Their gazes met in a silent duel. Finally, she slid the notebook across to him. "Their observations. Things I see. People. Feelings." She shrugged, suddenly vulnerable. "I write to understand the world, to breathe." Elias leafed through the pages with an unreadable expression. There, between meeting notes and to-do lists, were fragments of prose that flowed like rivers of ink. The Zenith Building, a crystal fortress where warriors wear Armani, and their weapons are sharp words in legal documents. No one visibly bleeds, but everyone carries scars. Further on, he keeps his gaze fixed on the horizon during meetings, as if he sees something the rest of us cannot perceive. What does a man who already has everything chase? What ghosts whisper in his ear when no one is looking? His expression shifted, so subtly that anyone else would have missed it. But Jessa, who had spent the week studying every micro-expression on that marble-sculpted face, noticed it. "You have talent," he admitted, returning her notebook. "But you need focus." "Was that a compliment, Mr. Thorne? I should mark this day on the calendar." It was a professional observation. "Right." Jessa hid a smile. "Did you review the presentation I sent you?" "I did." He paused, a silence that seemed to stretch into infinity. "It's acceptable." Coming from him, it was equivalent to a standing ovation. "However," he continued, "I need you to present it personally to our partners in Edinburgh." "Excuse me?" "We leave tomorrow. Pack light. We return Sunday." It wasn't an invitation. It was a decree. The news hit her like an unexpected wave. A weekend. With him. Alone. "Shouldn't I go with another executive, sir? I've only been here a week." "No one knows that presentation better than you." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Unless you don't feel prepared." The challenge hung in the impossible air. Impossible to ignore. "I'll be ready," Jessa replied, chin raised with determination. Chapter 4. Under the stars of Edinburgh. The private jet was a world apart. Italian leather, polished wood, and a silence so exquisite it almost hurt. Jessa watched the clouds from the window, while Elias reviewed documents with the concentration of a surgeon mid-operation. "Don't you ever rest?" she asked, breaking the sacred silence. "Do you?" he countered without looking up. "I've seen you writing until 2 in the morning. How do you know that?" "The system records server access times. That's disturbingly thorough. It's efficient." For the first time on the flight, he looked directly at her. "Why do you write so much in that notebook of yours?" The question caught her off guard. It wasn't simple professional curiosity. There was something more. "Why do words give shape to what we feel?" she answered honestly. "To name something is to begin to understand it." "And what are you trying to understand, Ms. Davies?" "Everything." Her smile became enigmatic. "And you, of course." A flicker of something. Surprise? Interest? Crossed Elias's face before he returned to his documents. The arrival at the 5-star hotel in Edinburgh brought an unforeseen complication. The impeccably uniformed receptionist gave them a practiced smile. "Welcome to the Grand Palace. We have your executive suite ready, Mr. Thorne." "Suite?" Jessa interrupted. "There should be 2 separate rooms." The woman typed nervously on her computer. "I apologize, but we only have 1 reservation. The suite has a separate living room with a sofa bed if you prefer." "It's fine," Elias interjected curtly. "It's a misunderstanding by my travel assistant." As the bellhop guided them toward the gilded elevators, Jessa felt her heart hammering against her ribs. 1 room, 1 weekend, and that enigmatic man who was starting to occupy too much space in the pages of her notebook. Crossing the threshold of the luxurious suite, with its panoramic views of the Scottish Highlands surrounding the city, Jessa dropped her small suitcase and turned to him with a defiant smile. "Don't worry, I don't bite, unless provoked." The digital clock read 2 in the morning when Jessa stepped onto the suite's balcony. The city of Edinburgh stretched beneath her like a sea of twinkling lights, while the silhouette of the mountains cut the horizon into majestic shadows. She couldn't sleep. The sofa bed turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. That wasn't the problem. It was Elias's presence on the other side of the slightly ajar master bedroom door that kept her thoughts spinning like an unstoppable carousel. Insomnia? A deep voice emerged from the shadows, startling her. Elias appeared on the balcony, wearing only black pajama pants. The silver moon outlined the contours of his torso with sculptural precision. Jessa had to make a conscious effort to keep her gaze fixed on his eyes. "Nights have always belonged to me more than days," she replied, leaning on the railing. "That's when thoughts flow most clearly." "And what thoughts keep you awake tonight, Ms. Davies?" "Jessa," she corrected softly. "At 2 in the morning, I think we can drop the formalities." A comfortable silence settled between them as they contemplated the nocturnal panorama. It seemed impossible that this calm man was the same executive feared by the entire company. "Why writing?" he asked suddenly. The question floated between them like a paper boat on deep waters. "My mother was a literature professor," Jessa began, surprising herself by sharing something so personal. "Every night she read me stories where words built bridges between impossible worlds. When she died, I discovered that writing was my way of continuing to converse with her." Elias nodded slowly, like someone receiving an unexpected revelation. "And you?" she asked. "What led you to the corporate world?" "Expectations," he replied curtly. "Third generation of businessmen. The Thorn name comes with predetermined obligations. Did you never dream of something different?" An enigmatic smile, the first genuine one Jessa had seen from him, subtly curved his lips. "Astronomy," he confessed quietly, like someone revealing a forbidden secret. "I spent entire nights with a rickety telescope on our rooftop, mapping constellations. And what happened to that dream? My father found it inappropriate for the heir to the Thorn Empire." His gaze was lost somewhere on the horizon. "The telescope disappeared. The stars remained. But they no longer belonged to me." Something stirred in Jessa's chest, an unexpected tenderness towards this man who held an entire universe beneath his icy facade. "The stars always belong to us," she murmured. "You just have to remember how to look at them." Their eyes met in the dim light, and for an instant, time seemed to suspend itself. Both their defenses, meticulously built over the years for very different reasons, began to crack like icebergs in spring. Chapter 5. The Silent Revelation. Morning brought the return of professional masks. During the presentation to the investors, Jessa eloquently presented the expansion plan, while Elias observed, his expression as inscrutable as ever. The Japanese, normally reserved, nodded with visible approval when she finished. The main representative approached Elias. "Impressive presentation. Your team perfectly understands our cultural vision." When the businessmen left, Elias turned to her. "Excellent work." He spoke with that economy of words that characterized him, but his eyes communicated much more. The tension between them had acquired a new quality, electric, vibrant, impossible to ignore. That night, the celebratory dinner at the hotel's panoramic restaurant unfolded amidst increasingly personal conversations and silences charged with meaning. "What's your biggest fear?" she asked, definitively dropping the formalities over glasses of red wine. "Failure?" he replied automatically. "No," Jessa shook her head. "That's the rehearsed answer. I want the real one." Elias looked at her intently, as if evaluating how much he could trust her. "Irrelevance," he finally confessed. "Building all of this, and in the end, it means nothing." "And for whom should it mean something?" she gently pressed. The question hung between them, unanswered. Back in the suite, Jessa paused in front of her makeshift bedroom door. The full moon poured its silver light through the windows, creating dancing shadows on the walls. "Thank you for trusting me with this presentation," she said, aware that she was referring to much more than just the work. "You have a gift with words," he replied, imperceptibly moving closer. "You see things others don't notice, just like you with the stars." The distance between them narrowed to inches. Jessa's breath became shallow, while the entire universe seemed to contract to that single point in space. It was impossible to determine who took the first step. Like two planets caught in mutual gravitation, they simply collided. The kiss began softly, almost tentative. A question posed with lips instead of words, but it quickly transformed into something voracious, desperate, as if both had been dying of thirst without knowing it until that precise moment. Elias's hands framed her face with surprising delicacy, while hers clung to his shirt, as if she feared everything would vanish. Time lost all meaning as they discovered a new language, more primary and honest than any they had shared until then. When they finally separated, breathless and with reddened lips, Jessa saw something new in those usually impenetrable eyes: vulnerability. And it was precisely that which terrified her. She took a step back, separating from the magnetic warmth of his body. "This," her voice trembled slightly, "this is a mistake." A shadow crossed Elias's face, so fast it almost seemed imaginary. "Why?" His voice sounded hoarser than usual. "Because I didn't come here to be another chapter in your book." The words escaped her lips before she could hold them back. "I've seen how things work in your world. Everything is temporary, replaceable." "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Jessa straightened her shoulders, regaining her determination. "I'm much more than a fleeting story, Elias, and I deserve to be the main character, not a footnote." With those words, she entered her room and closed the door, leaning against it as silent tears rolled down her cheeks. On the other side, without her being able to see him, Elias remained motionless, his palm pressed against the wood that separated them, so close and yet so far. Chapter 6. The Unspoken Goodbye. The return to London passed in a thick silence, interrupted only by strictly professional conversations. The invisible barrier between them seemed to have solidified, crystallized by that kiss that neither mentioned, but both remembered with painful clarity. Over the next week, Jessa immersed herself fiercely in her work. Her reports were impeccable, her emails precise, her agenda meticulous. The perfect executive assistant, nothing more and nothing less. The employees of Zenith Corp watched in amazement as she lasted beyond the fateful month, breaking the curse of previous assistants. Some even began to smile at her in the hallways, as if she had conquered hostile territory. What no one knew was that every night, upon returning to her small apartment, Jessa poured her emotions into feverish texts that she never showed anyone. Pages and pages about a man with stormy eyes who had contemplated the stars before burying his dreams under layers of responsibility and others' expectations. On Thursday afternoon, as she organized documents in the empty office, Elias's voice startled her. "I need an article for Fortune magazine." His tone was professional, distant. "A column on corporate innovation in Europe, something fresh, authentic." He paused. "I write like a corporate manual, and I need your perspective." The request, with that implicit recognition of her talent, caught her off guard. "I can prepare a draft for tomorrow. I need it today." Their eyes met briefly. "Stay after hours if necessary." When the clock struck 9 at night, the hallways of Zenith Corp lay deserted. Jessa typed furiously, the words flowing from her fingertips with surprising ease. The door to the main office opened. Elias emerged, his tie loosened and shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing muscular forearms, that hinted at secret hours in a private gym. Finished? Just sent it to your email. Jessa began to gather her things. I hope it's what you were looking for. Minutes later, Jessa was about to leave when Elias's voice stopped her. This is extraordinary. Jessa turned to find him contemplating the screen with an expression of genuine astonishment. It's honest, she said simply. It's brilliant. He looked at her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. I'll send it with my signature, but I want you to write more. As a ghostwriter, as an uncredited collaborator, for now. About what happened in Edinburgh, I'd rather not talk about it. Jessa raised a hand defensively. It was a moment of confusion. We're professionals. We can get past it. Something indefinable crossed Elias's face. Disappointment? Relief? Before he nodded briefly. Of course. Over the following weeks, a clandestine pattern emerged between them. Jessa wrote speeches, press releases, pieces that made Elias shine in the business world without anyone knowing that those words were born from his assistant's pen. What began as a collaboration gradually transformed into something more intimate. Nights working side by side in the office, late dinners ordered in, while they discussed ideas. Conversations that drifted towards personal territory before being professionally steered back. An electric tension permanently floated between them. In glances held a second too long. In fingers accidentally brushing while exchanging documents. In silences heavy with unspoken words. Your last column generated inquiries from 3 international publications, Elias commented one night as they shared Thai food in his office. They want more from the visionary Elias Thorne. From the ghost visionary, she corrected with an ironic smile. You should sign the next one. The proposal left her momentarily speechless. Why? Because it's fair. Their eyes met. Because you have talent. Because you deserve recognition. And what would your shareholders say if they discovered that Elias Thorne's literary genius isn't purely his business acumen? I don't give a damn what they think. The vehemence in his voice surprised her. It was the first visible crack in that facade of the perfect executive he showed the world. Since when? Since someone spilled coffee on my favorite shirt and didn't apologize properly. A spontaneous laugh escaped Jessa's lips. It was excellent coffee, and it would have been a fake apology. All barriers seemed to dissolve. When the laughter died down, the distance between them had imperceptibly shrunk. Jessa. The office phone interrupted the moment. Elias answered with obvious annoyance, listened briefly, and hung up. The charity gala. This Saturday. His expression turned serious. I need to attend. The request floated between them like a dangerous invitation. As your assistant? As my date? Jessa's heart gave a treacherous flip. I don't think that's appropriate. Nothing that's happened between us has been. His eyes darkened. And yet, here we are. Chapter 7. The Uninvited Guest. The emerald green dress Jessa chose for the gala hugged her figure like midnight water. Conversations momentarily faded before resuming in speculative murmurs. Everyone's looking at us, she whispered, suddenly aware of her position. Let them look. Elias's hand rested on her lower back, firm, possessive. You're stunning. The evening progressed, and the string quartet began to play a slow waltz. Something shifted in the atmosphere between them. Elias guided her onto the dance floor with a natural grace that revealed years of privileged upbringing. Their bodies fit perfectly as they moved to the music, oblivious to the curious glances that followed them. Why are you looking at me like that? She teased. You said I was just your assistant. The words triggered a silent explosion in Jessa's chest. Before she could answer, an elegant figure appeared at the edge of her peripheral vision. A dazzling woman, with immaculately styled black hair and a red dress that seemed painted onto her sculpted body, watched them from a distance. Her perfectly outlined lips curved into a slow smile as her eyes, sharp as daggers, clinically evaluated Jessa. "Who is she?" Jessa asked. Feeling an inexplicable chill, Elias followed her gaze, and his body tensed instantly. "Rhiannon Vance." His voice became strangely flat. "My ex-fiancée." The week following the gala brought an undeniable mutual acknowledgement. Stolen glances turned into stolen caresses in the empty elevator. Professional conversations gave way to whispered confessions behind closed doors. A parallel universe where only the two of them existed, separated from the outside world by fragile glass walls. No one at Zenith Corp dared to comment openly, but rumors spread through the underground. The way he found any excuse to call her to his office. The way she smiled when reading his messages. Minuscule details that formed a mosaic impossible to hide from the most attentive eyes. "You're playing with fire," Charlotte warned her during a hurried lunch in the cafeteria. "I don't know what you're talking about. You and Thorne, whatever's going on between you. We're professionals working together. Professionals who devour each other with their eyes when they think no one's watching." Her friend sighed. "Just be careful. That world you're entering has different rules." Jessa wanted to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Her attention was drawn magnetically to a new arrival. Rhiannon Vance, impeccable in an ivory pantsuit, walked as if the ground beneath her feet had the privilege of holding her. "What is she doing here?" Jessa murmured, feeling a knot form in her stomach. "Who?" "Thorne's ex-fiancée." Charlotte subtly turned. "She hasn't set foot in this building since they broke off the engagement 2 years ago. Something big must be happening." The rest of the day, Jessa tried to concentrate on her work, while Rhiannon's presence floated like a toxic cloud through the hallways. Elias was unreachable, locked in consecutive meetings. Her messages went unanswered, fueling a growing anxiety that she tried to rationalize. At 6 in the evening, when most employees were starting to leave, the door to the main office finally opened. Rhiannon emerged first, followed by Elias, whose face had returned to that impenetrable mask Jessa thought she had forgotten. "We need to talk," he said in a voice she didn't recognize. The office now seemed strangely hostile. Elias stood by the windows, gazing at the city as it gradually lit up under the twilight. "Is everything okay?" she asked, hating the insecurity that crept into her voice. "Rhiannon is returning to the board of directors." The words fell like stones into still water. "Her father controls enough shares to demand it. Can I prepare a statement?" "It won't be necessary." Elias finally turned to her. "There's something else." The door opened at that moment. Rhiannon entered with the grace of a panther, closing it behind her like someone establishing territory. "Sorry for the interruption," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I forgot my purse." Her gaze swept over Jessa. "Elias speaks wonders of your dedication." "Thank you." Jessa straightened instinctively. "It's a pleasure to officially meet you, Ms. Vance." "Rhiannon, please." Her smile widened like a predator savoring the moment before the attack. "After all, we're practically family. The air in the room is just right for our news." Rhiannon advanced towards him, placing a possessive hand on his arm. "Men and their priorities." "Rhiannon, it's not the time," Elias warned, a palpable tension in his jaw. "Why not? She's part of your trusted team, isn't she?" Rhiannon turned to Jessa with studied innocence. "Elias and I are getting married. Again." Jessa felt the oxygen leave the room as the words stabbed her chest like poisoned daggers. "I always knew you'd come back to me," Rhiannon continued, addressing Elias in a honeyed voice. "Now you have no choice." Elias remained motionless, like a statue caught between two opposing forces. "Is that true?" Jessa's voice emerged surprisingly firm. 3 syllables, no denial. Jessa gathered her things with mechanical movements as a strange calm replaced the initial storm. Her body seemed to move of its own accord, with a dignity she didn't know she possessed. "Congratulations to both of you," she said with glacial serenity. I'll submit my resignation tomorrow." "Jessa, wait!" She raised a hand. "To prove to me it wasn't your story, but your mistake." The walk to the elevator became endless. Each step echoed in the empty hallway as she struggled to maintain her composure. Only when the metal doors closed behind her did she allow the first tear to silently roll down her cheek. The dawn broke not over stars or dreams, but over the devastating clarity that follows disillusionment. Chapter 8. A new chapter begins. When she finished writing, she looked at the scattered pages around her. There was her heart, dissected into paragraphs and metaphors, more honest than she had ever been with herself. With trembling fingers, she gathered the sheets and carefully arranged them. She took a large envelope from her desk drawer and addressed it. Elias Thorne. At 7 a.m., when the corporate building was just waking up, she left the envelope on the empty desk she had occupied for those months that now seemed to belong to another life. She didn't collect her belongings. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. She simply walked to the elevators for the last time. One sleepless night, the phone rang insistently until he finally answered. "Mr. Thorne?" The receptionist's voice sounded confused. "Your assistant left something for you, but she's already left." Minutes later, Elias opened the envelope with impatient fingers. The pages fell onto his desk like autumn leaves. Fragile, beautiful, definitive. Like an invisible fist. There are loves that are comets, bright, spectacular, and destined to disappear after briefly illuminating the sky. Ours didn't even become that. It was barely a match lit in a storm, doomed from the start, but no less luminous while it lasted. 3 weeks. 21 exact days since Jessa had left Zenith Corp, taking with her much more than her talent with words. Spring had given way to a relentless summer that punished the city with suffocating temperatures, as if the weather itself reflected Elias's internal state. The executive office, once a sanctuary of efficiency and order, had become the scene of his deterioration. Reports piled up. Calls went unanswered. Zenith Corp began to resent the absence of its helmsman. "Your father would never allow this disaster," Rhiannon commented, inspecting the office with disdain. Her slender figure, encased in a navy blue dress, stood out against the chaos of scattered documents. "How many assistants have you fired this week? 3? 4? None met the requirements," he replied dryly. But Rhiannon approached with calculated steps. "None write like her, do they?" The indirect mention of Jessa caused the muscles of his jaw to visibly tense. The letter remained in the top drawer of his desk, a constant reminder of what he had lost due to cowardice, due to an inability to confront what truly mattered. The Japanese investors are restless since they received that bureaucratic memo. She lowered her voice. "I can handle it." "No, you can't." Rhiannon placed both hands on the desk, leaning towards him. "Look at yourself. You're falling apart, and everyone notices. What have you really come for?" The question floated like a slight crack, a flicker of calculation behind the feigned concern. "To save you from yourself." Her crimson lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As always, Elias watched her with renewed clarity, as if he suddenly saw beyond the mirage she had built. "The pregnancy." His voice changed imperceptibly. "Are you doubting me now, after everything we've shared?" "The results, Rhiannon." A tense silence settled between them. The ticking of the clock marked the seconds as a silent duel unfolded. "They don't exist." The confession finally emerged, surprisingly devoid of remorse. But it was necessary. There's no connection. The fury that engulfed Elias was so intense that he had to cling to the edge of the desk to avoid losing control. "Get out of my office." "Don't be dramatic. I did what was best for you, for the company. I always have." "The best?" The laugh that escaped his throat sounded strange, even to himself. "You have no idea what best means." The revelation of that secret, one he had never shared with Rhiannon during their years together, seemed to momentarily throw her off. "You'll find her." Her voice took on a condescending tone. "If she means that much to you, look for her. Offer her a better position, an astronomical salary. Everyone has a price. That's your fundamental error." Elias stood up, suddenly energized by having finally addressed what he had been avoiding for weeks. "Do you think everyone operates under your same rules? That everything boils down to power, money, and appearances? And isn't it? Not for her." Rhiannon's eyes narrowed dangerously. "So in love, so pathetic." Her tone dripped venom. "What would the shareholders say if they saw the great Elias Thorne before they have stepped out of this office in months?" Elias opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "Including this report that secured you a position on the board of directors." The surprise on Rhiannon's face was genuine for the first time. "Impossible. That report was masterful, eloquent, visionary." Elias completed the sentence. It was Jess's. He grabbed his keys, his phone, and Jess's letter, carefully folded. "Where do you think you're going? We have a meeting with the investors in 20 minutes. Cancel it. You can't just—" He simply walked past her. The determination on his face must have been convincing because, for the first time, Rhiannon found no words to stop him. The rain fell relentlessly over London, becoming heavier and more uniform. Sitting by the window of her small apartment, Jessa watched the drops slide down the glass while furiously typing on her computer. The blog she had started 3 weeks ago, almost as therapy, was beginning to gain followers. Confessions of a ghostwriter, anonymous stories about the dynamics of a ruthless world, a way to exorcise demons, and, perhaps, to maintain the connection with that world she had left behind. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, interrupting her thoughts. Opening the door, the sight momentarily left her breathless. Elias Thorne, soaked to the bone, dark hair plastered to his forehead, his controlled eyes burning with an almost feverish intensity. "How did you find my address?" was all she managed to articulate. "I'm the CEO of a multinational." A crooked smile, surprisingly vulnerable, appeared on his face. "And I asked Charlotte for help." Jessa remained motionless in the doorway, torn between the impulse to close the door and the almost physical need to open it. "The truth. You're late. You already have a truth on its way." The bitterness in her voice was palpable. "Congratulations, by the way. There's no pregnancy." The words burst forth. "There never was. Rhiannon lied." Time seemed to stop as she processed the information. "And you waited 3 weeks to tell me?" "Because I'm a coward." The rage Jessa had kept bottled up began to boil, mixing with a confusing sense of relief. "And what am I supposed to do with that information? Applaud? Thank you? No." He took another step closer. "Just listen to me." The rain redoubled its intensity outside, creating a watery curtain that isolated that moment from the rest of the world. The words, repeatedly, until they were engraved in my memory. It was just a release. It was poetry, right? His gray eyes became pleading. "You wrote things that broke me and also healed me." The phrase disarmed her defenses. Almost imperceptibly, Jessa softened her posture, allowing the threshold between them to become less impassable. "And now what, Elias? What's happened? Do we keep writing brilliant speeches while pretending there's nothing more?" The answer hung in the air between them. The rain beat with renewed fury, a perfect backdrop for the drama unfolding in that anonymous hallway of an ordinary building, where 2 wounded people faced the possibility that the rain might become something else entirely. Chapter 9. Rewriting Our Stars. The declaration hung between them as Jessa's apartment remained in shadow, illuminated only by the bluish light of her computer and the occasional flashes of lightning that drew ghostly shadows on the walls. Finally, she had allowed him in, more due to the persistence of the unspoken bond that existed between them than any logical reason. Her whole body yearned to move closer, but her dignity demanded caution. Elias's gaze swept over the small space, a modest living room that also functioned as a writing studio, with books piled in unstable towers, abandoned coffee cups, sticky notes with fragments of incomplete thoughts. "I'm here to offer you a position as Director of Communications," he said finally, pulling a folder from his wet briefcase, "with your name on every text, with public recognition. And why would I do that? Because you have a gift that deserves to be celebrated, not hidden." His eyes took on a hypnotic intensity. "But that's not the real reason I'm here." He held up the envelope she had left. Jessa immediately recognized her own handwriting on the outside. "I've read these pages every night," he continued, approaching cautiously. "No one has ever seen me with such clarity. The loneliness behind the power, the gilded cage I built around my dreams. It was just catharsis," she murmured, suddenly vulnerable at the idea that her most intimate words had been repeatedly dissected. Elias vehemently shook his head. "It was brutal honesty, the kind of truth no one dares to tell me since I inherited the Thorn name." An especially violent thunderclap shook the windows, as if the sky itself underscored the intensity of the moment. "You remember what you wrote here?" He pointed to a specific paragraph. "No one should give up contemplating their own stars, not even to build their own empires." Jessa nodded silently. She remembered every word poured onto those feverish pages. 2 weeks ago, I went to the rooftop of the corporate building and set up a telescope." A shy, almost childlike smile lit up his usually severe face. "For the first time in 20 years, I observed the constellations, thanks to you." The confession uprooted something deep within Jessa, a seed of tenderness she thought she had definitively eradicated. "That doesn't change what happened. I don't pretend it does." He took another tentative step towards her. "I just want to show you that your words have power, that they can transform realities. And Rhiannon? Off the board, out of my life." His voice took on a definitive tone. "I chose my own stars this time." The distance between them had shrunk to barely a meter. The familiar electricity manifested again, more intense than ever. "There's something else." Elias pulled another envelope from his briefcase. "Your blog. Confessions of a Ghostwriter. I discovered it 3 days ago." Jessa paled. "How?" "Your style is unmistakable." A proud smile curved his lips, like a literary fingerprint. "It's just a hobby so captivating that I sent it to Edward Miller, the editor of Nova Literature." Incredulity tightened her voice. "He wants to meet you. Talk about a book, a weekly column." He extended the envelope towards her. "The decision is yours, of course." Jessa took the envelope with trembling fingers, unable to fully process the information. Her private writings, her personal catharsis, were now in the hands of the country's most prestigious editors. "Why did you do this?" "Because your talent deserves its own stage." The sincerity in his eyes was overwhelming. "Because I needed to show you that your voice matters, that it always mattered." A silence heavy with meaning settled between them, interrupted only by the constant drumming of the rain against the windows. "Don't you think," Elias whispered, his voice barely audible above the storm, "that perhaps, this time, we could write a different story, together?" Chapter 10. Our Constellation. 2 months later, the rooftop of the Nova Literature building glowed under a remarkably clear London night sky. Small fairy lights intertwined in pergolas created a magical atmosphere, while a table for two awaited next to a telescope. Jessa gazed at the city from the railing, wrapped in a midnight blue dress that seemed to capture fragments of stars with every movement. Her transformation during those weeks had been as internal as it was external, the confidence of someone who finally finds her place in the universe. Her weekly column, Observations from the Heights, had quickly become a must-read for thousands. Her blog, now officially backed, multiplied followers daily. and the manuscript of her first book lay freshly printed on the table prepared for their intimate celebration. "You look like a constellation come to life." Elias's voice made her turn. He approached with 2 champagne flutes and an expression that blended pride and something deeper. "Or vulnerable. Is this how you saw them from your childhood rooftop?" she asked, accepting the glass. "I saw them as stories waiting to be discovered." His fingers brushed hers deliberately, "just like I see you now." Over those months, they had slowly rebuilt their relationship. Professional encounters that extended into the early hours. Conversations about books, dreams, and parallel universes. Casual dinners that ended with long night walks. A bond undefined by labels, allowing trust to regenerate naturally, like a garden after winter. "I have something for you." Elias pulled a small package from his jacket. A first edition. Jessa carefully unwrapped the paper to find her own book, Unspoken Words, with her name in gold letters on the deep blue cover. On the first page, next to the printed dedication, Elias had handwritten a note. "To the woman who taught me to rediscover the stars, will you marry me? Even if it means arguing about coffee every morning." Time seemed to stop as Jessa looked up from the book to find Elias holding a ring with a tiny, sparkling star set within it. On the contrary, Elias gently took her hand. "We've been writing this story together for months, word by word, truth by truth. And what about Zenith Corp? What about your empire?" "It's still there," he replied. "But now I also have a telescope." A genuine smile illuminated his face. A hand found hers. And finally, his eyes met hers. The eyes of the man who had rediscovered his humanity through her words. "Yes," she replied with a radiant smile. "But I write the vows and the rules." Elias's laughter echoed into the night. Free, authentic, completely new. Their hands framed her face. Their silhouettes merged into one as the city twinkled like a reflection of the sky. Now she was writing her own story, with love, freedom, and him by her side. A new chapter was beginning, not written in the stars, but in the infinite possibilities of 2 hearts that finally found where words make a home. And so our story ends, or rather, continues to write itself. From what corner of the world are you joining us today? Were you enjoying this story with a coffee? We hope you didn't spill it on anyone important, or perhaps you were gazing at the stars from your window, like our protagonist. Tell us in the comments what you thought of this journey between the corporate world and the power of words.